So I will hand the floor over to Florent Del Pinto, who works for the International Federation of Red Cross Societies as head of the Southern Cone of South America. And in this role, Mr. Del Pinto oversees the IFRC direct portfolio, overseeing emergency response systems, humanitarian analysis, and digital information management. So Florent, we are running a bit short on time, but we really want to hear your presentation on concrete applications, and then hopefully have a few minutes just for a bit of Q&A. So please, the floor is yours.
Sounds good. And yeah, I'll be short and we can skip the presentation itself. One element I want to present is how do we use AI to indeed do a better job, I would say, at the country level, and how do we really leverage it? So you heard it from Walter, you heard it as well from Javier, but one of the key game changer for us is around predictive analysis and how do we use predictive analysis to then leverage preparedness and then, of course, be more efficient and more impactful at country level. I really want to emphasize one of the risks that has been mentioned before, or one maybe a limit, is that it's less about, with AI today, it's less about building a new system, building a new tool to ensure that it's as accurate as it can be, but it's more how do we build processes, how do we use AI to make it, I would say, real, and how do we transform a tool that is AI? It's only a tool, and I think that here is also something that we need to emphasize, is the most important thing about the tool is how the tool is being used. So how do we ensure that this tool is used in a way that it's really interesting, and how do we build human processes to use this tool? And on what we have been using with the International Federation of the Red Cross is we developed the Global Crisis Data Bank, and this is the largest repository of information on past natural disasters and hazards and their impact. So, of course, it was the same diagnosis as everybody else. We have more disasters, more people affected, and less funds available. So how do we transform the way we work to be more anticipatory, to be more into preparedness, because we know that it saves money and it saves lives and it makes everything much more efficient. So how does AI play a role in there? AI allows us to really build a bigger data bank and build a way of bridges between various type of data. So the data we are compiling is data around hazard data, when it occurs, the magnitudes and all of that. The impact data, what has been the impact in terms of schools, of damages, of lives being lost, and also what has been the response data, because it's interesting to predict a disaster, but what we want to do is to also prepare what will be our response. It's nice to know that there will be a hurricane happening, but it's very important for us to know what we're going to do in this case in 90% of the case. So we are able to predict not only the impact or the hazard, but also our organizational response. And with this information, we're able to really most likely predict the disaster and its impact. And this is mainly the most important usage of AI for us. How do we use that? So then when we have this prediction, we then have a committee, and I think this is very important to then plug in the tool to a human validation of the foresight, to then be able to implement a preparedness and a supply chain preparedness process. So we're going to identify the countries in which it's most likely to happen. We're going to identify what kind of intervention, what kind of kits, what kind of stocks, what kind of whatever things we're going to need to be able to then prepare. So then we're going to develop a full supply chain and readiness plan to be able to do stock prepositioning, framework agreements with providers, but also various type of activities in terms of preparedness to ensure that, for example, we can distribute cash in time, that we secure the provider that will give us the cash, that we secure the place in which we're going to use the specific cards from Visa or MasterCard, but also trying to see as well how we can plug in anticipatory action elements. We are using also this methodology and this data bank to be able to develop more triggers to know when it's going to happen. So what we do is that we develop triggers ahead of time because we know that this trigger is a disaster. So then what we're able to do is identifying those triggers ahead of time, being prepared, and setting up what we call the early action protocol in place. So with this AI tool, we are really able to leverage this predictive analysis and really able to make the overall intervention in those countries much more relevant, but much more timely as well. This is really important to show that predictive analysis can lead to a much more timely and a much quicker, but also a much more efficient humanitarian action. So I think I've heard all of the risks that have been mentioned before. But if we take, I would say, this example and use it as a global lens, for me, the main limitation or risk about AI and its usage is really around these elements on the humanitarian section, but also on the human interaction, on when do we validate it. We have to keep in mind that we have to validate the system when we develop it, but we have to check in regularly. We should not consider that the predictive analysis will run like this forever. We need to be able to do cyclical checks on what it provides. And that's the first point. And the second point is really to ensure that this tool is plugged in concrete initiatives, concrete processes that will then deliver. If AI is not plugged into a process, it will not make anything. If it doesn't lead to decision making, it's basically just a nice tool with a nice dashboard that will show you a nice map where you're going to have something to happen. But this is not what we're aiming at. And I think this is where AI is an accelerator of the organizational transformation that humanitarian organizations have to do. We started with data, and I think with AI is data multiplied by X. So for me, this is really the thing that we need to be able to adapt as a humanitarian actor. But we are a bit short on time, so I'll stop it there. But happy to inject later on.
Thank you so much, Florent. So many questions, and do please put them in your chat, in the chat, and I will try. We only have about 8 minutes left, but I'd like to come back to maybe just one or two points that was raised. This human in the loop, which we've just heard about from Florent, that importance of validation. There's still a sense from some that AI is going to provide the solution, and it's really the answer to all of our challenges. But what I would like to better understand is how easy is it really to insert that human in the loop, and how easy is it to ensure that human expertise is what's driving the decision making, and that the information generated by AI is just part of the overall picture. It's not the full picture in itself because of the risks that we've heard about today. I don't know, maybe Florent, you could expand on that a little bit, and then I might ask some other colleagues as well.
Yeah, thank you. For me, the human part should be in different aspects of the system. For example, in our way of working, we are not asking an AI LLM to tell us where will be the next disasters. That's not what we're asking AI to do. What we are asking AI to do is to be able to compile some specific data that we know that has been validated. So and I think this is very important to note, is that we're not only using our own data, we are also using open data, we are also using data from other organizations, but all of this data is curated, is validated. And then once we can aggregate and treat this data, there is another level of analysis that has been built by humans to ask what AI could do in order to be able to predict what's going to happen. And this is where then it tells us that this is where it goes and where it goes. So I think it's very important that when we build the system, the analytical system, our engineers are fully understanding which part is to a AI system and which data is something that is coming from different sources. So that's the first point. The second point is also because of how AI works and because AI learns, is we need to do regular checks on what it produces. And we need to do regular check on not only what it produces, like what is the outcome of its thinking, but its own algorithm of why it came to it. Because this is also something that we tend to do in the humanitarian action, is that we develop a tool, and I would say pre-AI, we develop a tool, the tool is there, it's developed, then we use it. And then once the tool is there, we just use it again. The problem with AI is that we have a risk of evolution. So this evolves because it learns, which is very good. But we have to keep that in check because sometimes we can see that it's not necessarily accurate. So I think that we also need to have cyclical checks of the content of the LLMs and of the analysis that AI has been doing. So this is for me really two important matters.
Yeah, excellent points. And in a way, it's important to validate the AI outputs so that they become an input into a broader picture that leads to decision making.